They say a scream only matters if someone is alive to hear it. But the truth is, in certain places, a scream can still echo even when its source has been dead for decades. And if you ever visit the abandoned psychiatric hospital built in 1962 County, understand why locals never answer what happened in that building after it closed. Because every survivor, the very few who still talk, say the same thing: the patients never left. It started as a symbol of progress, a shining modern psychiatric institution meant to treat mental illness with human dignity. Newspapers called it the future of compassionate therapy. What they never printed was that, within 5 years, the staff turnover was the highest in the entire state. Families mysteriously withdrew patient records, and the doctors became silent about their work, refusing interviews or academic reviews. Something changed in that building, something they couldn't admit publicly without destroying their careers. People didn't fear the patients. They feared what the patients claimed to see. Rumors claimed that, during late-night rounds, multiple patients described the same tall man with no mouth standing behind nurses during check-ins. A figure that would disappear the moment the staff turned around. At first, doctors dismissed it as symptom overlap or mass suggestion, until the night 2 nurses quit on the same shift, refusing to even return for their last paycheck. Their exit interviews were sealed, and that's when the hospital was labeled internally as high-risk overnight staffing. Patients began acting strangely in ways that didn't match their original diagnoses. Individuals suffering from depression suddenly screamed at walls as if someone was whispering to them. Catatonic patients who hadn't spoken in months suddenly begged nurses not to turn the lights off, insisting that something crawled from the vents when the corridor went dark. Then the first official unexplained incident report was filed in November 1964. A young male patient was found standing in the hallway at 3:19 a.m., staring at the security camera with his eyes fully open, unmoving, unresponsive, and ice cold, like he was dead on his feet. It wasn't his behavior that shocked the staff, it was the tape. When supervisors reviewed the footage, they saw the patient wasn't walking. He appeared standing in one frame, then instantly several feet forward in the next without moving, as if he teleported through still frames. The camera showed no glitch, no static, nothing that explained how he reached the exact center of the hall. The staff blamed the hardware. The technicians blamed the lighting. The higher authority blamed exhaustion. No one blamed the building. Not yet. 2 years later, disinfected floors began showing footprints leading in the opposite direction of staff pathways. Sometimes wet, sometimes dusty, sometimes smeared in something that was never officially identified. When nurses tried to clean them, some stains reappeared in new hallways, despite no one walking there. In 1966, a new psychiatrist from Philadelphia named Dr. Howard Lanes joined the facility. He was confident, skeptical, and determined to debunk institutional paranoia. On his first month, he volunteered for 3 back-to-back night shifts, promising to write a full psychological breakdown explaining the collective hysteria and fear contagion. He didn't even last 10 nights. On his last recorded shift, he ran out of the building, leaving behind his suitcase, notebook, and even car keys, sprinting barefoot down the access road until security detained him. His final recorded words, written shakily in his last log message, read, "The hallucinations are not theirs." The building slowly moved toward closure, but it never officially shut down. Instead, patient count dropped, records disappeared, and funding stopped without explanation. By early 1971, only 6 patients remained unclaimed by family or state transfer, and every one of them slept with their backs against the wall, knees pulled to chest, facing the door, too afraid to let anything approach them from behind. Before I continue, if you are the type of person who watches these stories at night, alone, or while scrolling through comments instead of focusing on what you're hearing, remember this: awareness is protection. Ignoring details is how people repeat history without realizing it. If you want the next investigation, and Dante want this one stuck in your subconscious without closure, subscribe right now. Not for me, but for your peace of mind. Some stories are psychological traps. Once heard, they need resolution, or they linger. Tap subscribe so you don't leave this one halfway. Back to the final days. On October 14th, 1971, a storm knocked out power across 3 counties. Emergency generators failed and security lighting shut down. When power returned, 5 of the remaining 6 patients were found sitting upright in their beds, eyes open, pupils dilated, unresponsive, as if frozen in terror. No signs of struggle, no cardiac trauma, no medical explanation. Only one patient survived, a woman named Elise, who refused eye contact with anyone, whispering that the mouthless man finally found his voice when the lights went out. She spent the remaining years of her life refusing to enter a room without windows or direct sunlight. She slept outdoors, even in freezing weather, claiming darkness made him move. Her final interview was sealed, but an unofficial transcription leaked decades later. In it, she said, "He wasn't a ghost. He wasn't a demon. He was here before the hospital. We didn't go insane. He made us see. The hospital was abandoned, left untouched, never demolished, and that in itself should bother you. If it was harmless, it would have become a museum, a commercial property, or a tourist site. The land wasn't repurposed. The county rejected every redevelopment request. Blueprints, patient records, Psychological case files, and even electrical service logs simply stopped, as if the institution was erased, not closed. Locals say that if you approach the building after midnight, you can still see hallway lights flick on for a few seconds before going dark again. No electricity, no generator, no wiring inspections. Yet lights flash like someone walking with a torch down the main corridor. Some explorers recorded faint tapping sounds on metal doors. Consistent footsteps pacing the upper floor, and muffled crying, not loud, but quiet. Like someone crying into bedsheets to avoid attention. Here is the final unresolved question investigators still whisper. If a psychiatric hospital is designed to treat the mind, what happens when the building itself becomes mentally unstable? No one knows if that entity fed on insanity, created it, or manifested from it. No one knows if it wanted fear, worship, or company. And worst of all, no one knows if it stayed behind or left with the survivors. If you ever hear soft tapping when you're alone, especially in complete darkness, count the taps. If there are 3, pause and don't respond. Once acknowledgement happens, patterns form, and patterns invite attention. Remember, not every abandoned building is empty. Some are simply waiting. And if you want more stories that aren't recycled, sugar-coated, or fictionalized into cheap jump scares, subscribe now, not because it's YouTube etiquette, but because the next story might explain something you've already experienced but dismissed. Curiosity without context is how people lose sleep. Context is what we do here.